There we go. Can everybody see that? Yeah. We don't know exactly how tall it is. It looks similar to like the Lone Mountain or McKinney. It's got the one spire.
Yeah, 200 and something feet.
Yeah, it's got to be 200 something. So it's so interesting. This is so close to the Layton Temple. Like these two huge, 89, 90,000 temples, and they're so close together. It's amazing.
15 minutes between the two. Yeah.
15 minutes. So what's really interesting here, I'll pan a little bit around here. It's under construction. Looks like they have some of the landscaping in. They're getting everything put together. From this angle, you can't see. There are houses to the left, to the right. I mean, they're so teeny tiny compared to the size of this massive temple. I think it's hard for neighbors to understand when a temple's announced and going to go in, just how much bigger than the normal, what you would see in your neighborhood, what the codes allow are, don't you think?
Absolutely. I lived here and had no idea how big this was going to be until it showed up.
Yeah, in fact, I was with you when you were driving past and you're like, what? You couldn't believe it was there. Now, something really interesting about this temple is that it is one of the ones that they're building more recently with 2 baptistries. Yeah. Now, a baptistry is an area, in the temple they do baptisms for the dead. That means that mostly youth, you can do this ordinance when you're 11, starting when you're 11, and you go in and you get baptized. You really get baptized. You put on white clothes and you get dunked under the water in a font on 12 oxen, but you're doing it with the name of a person who is deceased. So that means, you're performing this here on earth, and then that means it's also done in heaven, and that's kind of how the LDS Church redeems the dead. They go through ceremonies in their temples on earth so that people that have passed away, that are already dead, can become Mormon, or as we're taught, have the option to become Mormon. We're also told that there are just millions of people waiting. Everyone that's ever been on the earth is waiting for some Mormon on earth to come and do a baptism or a marriage or whatever inside the temple. So this new idea of 2 baptistries means more and more kids can come in. And why do you think that is, Landon? Why are they trying to just make more space to have the kids come in?
Because I don't think any adults are coming in, so they're having to go to the adults to get them in. They're going to the kids to bring the adults. The adults will bring the kids in, and then you got both of them coming.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think, and I will say that it does tend to be crowded. Youth groups often make this their activity, to go to the temple some evening or Saturday morning or part of a church weekend. And it is a big deal. And I have heard that it can be crowded getting these youth groups in, because they really, really point to this as something that you definitely want to do. Woo, boy, there's a lot of traffic here. That'll be interesting when the temple's actually in. I have to say, this road is just a little 2-lane road. Look at this. That will be interesting when there's a lot of temple traffic. But anyway, the idea of 2 baptistries means that you can pack twice as many people in. So the kids will be sitting down in front of their leaders as young as 11 and answering those questions about chastity, morality, worthiness, so that they can get a temple recommend to go inside and do baptisms. And of course, like you said, Landon, they'll be bringing their parents. Hey, Mom, Dad, you guys got to go. The youth leaders will have to go. It's just a way to get more people, I think, to the temple.
Yeah, I can't believe with Layton Temple going just up the street and this temple, you now have 3 baptistries to keep busy. Mm-hmm. The youth groups are going to be going once or twice a month. I think it might be the new youth program. Yeah. Instead of scouts and camping and overnighting, you'll be going to the temple. We also see in Heber, they put it up near the youth camp, so that when you go to youth camp, you can go to the temple. Mm-hmm. They're going away from outdoors and communing with nature and more towards you go and do a performance of some ordinance in a temple somewhere.
You go into the temple and you kind of bind yourself to the temple at a very young age. You've got the worthiness interviews, you got the expectation that you'll go instead of doing maybe some other things like when we were kids. The youth activities were like water skiing or let's have a picnic, and now it's all, the word is priesthood purpose, so it's all kind of centered around the temple. So I don't know, it seems like a strategy to me, because as Landon mentioned, adults, the numbers way on the decline as far as who's going. The sessions are very limited, and even the people attending the sessions, there aren't that many. So youth is a time where you can really, the parents will say you're going. and you have to go.
And you can manipulate the youth pretty easily to get them to go somewhere. I mean, we saw in Heber they had ice cream and pizza to get them out to protest. We saw at Lone Mountain. They brought in dozens of youth to sit in the, you know, these youth weren't interested in
a city council meeting about a temple.
But, you know, they make a big party atmosphere, bring them in, tell them they need to come, tell them that the temple is relying on them, that they have to bear their testimony of its importance, and pretty soon they're all up there crying about how important this building is to them, when we all know, having been there, that we weren't all excited about having to go to a temple activity. You know, your first time, second time, after that it gets a little bit redundant.
Yeah, that's true. And I will say that youth also have to pay tithing to go. That's part of your question in front of your bishop, even when you're 11. If you make any money, did you mow a lawn? Have you given 10% to the church? So it's definitely a way to put you on that, as they refer to, covenant path. And I agree with you. What happened up in Heber, where they kind of canceled regular youth activities and set up food trucks and pizza and ice cream to get the youth there to the city building to show, you know, their support for the temple. And they even mentioned that in general conference, although they didn't mention the food, right? The enticement of the food. So I don't know, it seems like just all roads are leading to the temple in so many different ways. It's just a hot button issue with all the temples being built and the neighbors saying not right here in my neighborhood, somewhere where it's zoned. And here's an interesting thing about this temple. So, you know, we cover zoning laws being changed before anyone's even aware. We've covered that in Heber and Cody and Lone Mountain and the McKinney Temple here. Well, Landon started thinking, with that paradigm in mind, about this temple being announced in
2020. Housing, and that they were changing the codes for high density housing. I thought at the time, well, our kids need apartments, they can't afford houses anymore. I was okay with that. And now after seeing the playbook, I'm wondering if those codes coincided with the change to allow the temple, because this temple is clearly by far the largest building in town. I don't think we even have a fire truck that would reach to the top of this building.
Oh, that's a good point. They'll have to get something that could. Doesn't a city code insist that you have something that will reach
a fire truck that could reach the top of this? Maybe they've got a ladder that reaches. I don't know, but it's way taller than anything in the current city right now. So.
So that is really interesting to think that before anyone was even aware, you know, and we've heard this in other places. Oh, the codes were changed to allow for higher density housing. That's always what it is. Because with that, then there's wiggle room and conditional use permits. So wouldn't that be interesting if that happened here in Syracuse? Of course, this is in Utah. There's no opposition at all to the temple, or if there is, it's not organized or mobilized or vocal. In fact, the only place in Utah I've heard of that is when they announced a temple in the Tooele, Utah area. So rural, like completely rural, a very small population. And those people, even though they were active LDS, they said, no way, this can't happen. And in that case, the LDS Church quickly just changed the location. I think when their own members kind of stand up and say no, they're going to change it. But as I hear it anecdotally, there's still problems in that area as far as relationships in the church, where some people might blame other people. How come you protested this? You took the temple away.
Out of our town.
But it's just so problematic, and it's such a burden on people in wards and stake to try to staff a temple. I know Bountiful is very close to Layton, and I just heard that they took 1,000 temple workers. Those are volunteers from wards and stakes that volunteer in the temples